What's up, beautiful geeks? Welcome to another video, and today we're going to be talking about how I study for and pass the AZ-900. That's the Azure Fundamentals exam. We're going to talk about the books, the written materials, the video course, the practice test, everything I use as a whole to study for the exam. Also, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification. I just started a new job and there are a lot of new things that I need to learn and get used to like very quickly. So I need to start building labs at home, like setting up an Exchange server from scratch and doing so much more. So make sure you hit that subscribe button because I'm thinking about starting to come out with a video every week. So if you hit that subscribe button, if you want to see the struggle of climbing up an IT ladder, trust me, it's busy work and it's a struggle, and I'm here to show you all of it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. With that being said, let's go ahead and get the video started. First thing we're going to talk about is the exam objective. So as I always said in all of my videos that I've made about passing my exams, is that you want to go to the main website. So in this case, go to Microsoft, link is in the description box below, go to the exam page and download the exam objective. The reason why I look at the exam objective before taking any exam is because it gives me a really good idea of what the exam is. If you're not looking at an exam objective before you take an exam, you are doing something wrong. So go to Microsoft, download the exam objective, go through the exam objective, make sure you look at it, read it as a whole, and then create a structure from it. Create a structure, say this is tab 1, I need to understand 20% of this, 40% of this, because that's the way Microsoft break it down, and then kind of go into that bullet point and try to understand each point. So that's what I do for pretty much all exam, and this exam is no exception. So the first thing you need to do, go to Microsoft, download the exam objective, and once you download the exam objective, go through it in detail and kind of highlight it. And as you're learning things, make sure you're checking things up and say, I understand that, I understand that, I understand that, and then go all the way down to the exam objective. So that's the first thing you need to do. Download the exam objective and go over the exam objective. Second thing that we're going to talk about is the book and the written material that I use for the exam. The book that I used is this guy right here. Now, before I even go into this book, I'm going to say you do not need this book at all. And that's not to say that this book is not a good book. This was a great book. However, you do not need this book, reason being that Microsoft has created a very well structured learning path for each of the exam, and all you really need is to go through that learning path. Now granted, right, the learning path itself is so tedious to go through because it's reading after reading, and then after each section you take some sort of like practice tests, like a couple of questions, and sometimes when you're going through some of the sections you will do labs and stuff like that. It is tedious, but if you do want to pass the exam, going through that learning path, going through that Microsoft material is a must. As you can see, I'm going to put it on the screen. It's a must. You have to go through that. Well, that coupled with a video series, right, will help a lot. And we're going to talk about the video series later, but let's not worry about the video series now. The learning path is a must. You have to go through the learning path. You just have to at least kind of read through it. If you don't want to go through the whole thing, just kind of read through it, glance through it, and go through it, because that helped a lot for me. Now, I studied for the exam in a short period of time. I think I took a week and a half to study for the exam, but that's because I went through the Microsoft Learning Path. I read the Microsoft Learning Path, and I went through a video series as well. Now, again, the Microsoft Learning Path is free, so I think you don't, that's why I say you don't necessarily need this book. Now, if you're someone that likes to have that physical book in your hand and want to understand and highlight things, and I did that in this book, kind of highlight some things and go through the book. This is a great book, but another reason why I think that you don't necessarily need this book at all is because Azure kind of changed so frequently. Right? You could be studying for an exam and something has changed. And Microsoft is pretty good at keeping up with that and adding that to their learning material. But this book is kind of static in a way because it doesn't change until a new series come out. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. And also, I don't want to tell you guys to buy this book. I did bought this book. I did went through it. I did read it. But I don't want to tell you guys to buy this book when there's like a detailed material that you can get for free online that Microsoft created. So the number one resource that I use to study for the exam, I did read this book. I just want to get out of the way. But for the most part, the number one resource that I used was the Microsoft Learning Path. And again, the link will be in the description box below, and if you've seen it here as well. So for the materials that are reading materials that I use, it's one, this book. And again, you don't need this book. I just wanted to make that clear. Sound like a broken record. But this book, and also a must, is the Microsoft Learning Path. That's a must. Thing that we're going to talk about are the video courses that I use, and as always, you know it's coming. I used IT Pro TV, but I also use another series of videos as well. So let me go through them. So the first video series that I went through was IT Pro TV. I went through the IT Pro TV video series. I can't say IT Pro TV. I went through the IT Pro TV. Now that I talk about it, I can't say it. I went through the IT Pro video series training. It was great. It was really well put together. It went exactly according to the exam objective. It was really well put together. I loved it. I thought it was really great, but I wanted something else to kind of back that up. So I went to Udemy and I looked for an Azure course, and you can see it on the screen now. And I went through that as well. So as far as video series go, like a whole video series, number one, IT Pro TV. Link will be in the description box below if you do want to check it out. Number one is IT Pro TV. I went through it. I went through the whole video series. It was great. I loved it. Number two was the Udemy course that I went through. Another great course as well. It's a lot more shorter than the IT Pro TV. So if you're looking for something shorter, you definitely probably want to go with the Udemy course. It's a lot more shorter. The IT Pro TV is long, but it's not as long as some of the other courses that I've taken on IT Pro TV, or the video courses that I've watched in IT Pro TV. So definitely IT Pro TV and the Udemy course and the Udemy video course. I'm gonna put the link for each in the description box below. What I also did, and this was very crucial, this was very important, this helped me out a lot. There's a guy that created a video. I'm gonna put a link in the description box below. His name is John. Really great content, right? He has this like roundup series, so to speak, like a roundup series of the exam. Like I looked at his video, I think it was a day before, actually it was the same day, because I had the exam at 8 and I watched the video early in the morning, I watched the video early in the morning. So what it does is that it kind of round up everything that you need to know for the exam. Now, just watching that and going to go take the exam, you're not going to pass it, most likely, not unless you're already extremely familiar with Azure. Then maybe just watching that video series is going to help you out a lot. But his video series was really great. It rounded up everything that I needed to know for the exam. It kind of explained to me like, hey, these are some of the things that you might want to pay attention to before going to go take the exam. So make sure you check him out. His name is John. I'm going to put his link in the description box below, and I've showed his video here as well. Very detailed. Very well. I also use them for the MS-900. I'm going to talk about that in another video. I also use them for the MS-900 for his roundup. But that video is a video that you want to watch after reading the material, the Microsoft material, after going through maybe like one of these video series, whether IT Pro TV or Udemy, whichever one you choose. After going through that, the day of the exam, right? Maybe 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever. The day of the exam, watch this guy's 1 hour roundup of what you need to know before taking the exam. That was helpful for me. It was helpful, and it was fresh in my mind right before taking the exam. So definitely make sure you check him out. So those are the three things that I used to study for the exam in terms of video course. I used the IT Pro TV video course. I use a course from Udemy. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box as well. And I definitely use this guy's YouTube video course as well to round up. Now, if you don't want to buy a course from Udemy, it's pretty cheap. If you don't want to pay for IT Pro TV, if you do not want to do, I like a structure course. So that's why I'm willing to pay for some of these courses to take them, because there's a lot more structure. But if you just want to go to YouTube and look at it, you don't have to buy any of these courses. The Microsoft Learning Path is free. Go to YouTube and look at the courses. That will help you out a lot, so you can do that as well. But for me, I use IT Pro TV, I use the Udemy course, and I used the YouTube video, John's YouTube video, to kind of round up everything up for me. So those are the video courses that I use to pass the exam. So the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of like a lab, well, not really a lab, but a labs and practice test that I use to pass the exam. So for labs, and this is very good too, but this is very important too, good and important. It's very good and important because if you want to pass the exam, you have to play around with the environment a little bit. So what I did is Microsoft has like some kind of free trial that you can sign up for the Azure platform and be able to get in there and play around with it. So that's what I did. I took advantage of that, and I'm doing that right now too as well for my AZ-104. Well, you can only sign up one, but I'm using the same account for my AZ-104. I went in there. There's the thing about the AZ-104. I mean the AZ-900. There's not really kind of like a structure, lab that you can just go without having to kind of register for the, I don't know, the free trial of Azure. Plus it's free, so you can't really complain there, right? Because there's nothing like that. So for the lab, I had to register for Azure, the Azure on the Microsoft platform. I had to log in there, play around with things, kind of go and play around with the platform for a lot of the concept and things that I'm learning. So you're definitely going to need to do that if you want to play around. And I highly advise that you do that. I highly advise that you sign up for the free trial. Go in there, play around with it. Like a lot of things that they're talking about, just go in there, scroll through, play around with it, and try to understand the concept. So for labs, it's not really necessarily a lab. That's what I had to do, right? Sign up for the free trial. Once I'm learning about a lot of things, I'm kind of going into the Azure platform and playing around with it. So that's what I had to do for, let's call it lab, right? For practice test, I went with the IT Pro TV practice test. I always use the IT Pro TV practice test. Reason being that I've already paid for it. I don't want to go pay for something else. I'm sure if you go online and look up Azure AZ-900 practice test, YouTube will take you to a lot of places. But I've already paid for IT Pro TV, and I love using IT Pro TV. And again, they have everything in one place. So I went ahead and used the IT Pro TV practice test. That was more than enough for me to pass the exam. But what I also noticed was that the IT Pro TV practice tests were a lot more harder than the exam itself. Seriously speaking, it was a lot more harder than the exam itself. Now, what was very similar to the exam, I would say somewhat similar, is the Microsoft Learning Path. Now, this is why I stress that you need to go through the Microsoft Learning Path, because the Microsoft Learning Path was very on point to the exam itself, right? So it kind of, if you go through the Microsoft Learning Path, you will get to see some of the things in there on the exam itself. So definitely go through the Microsoft Learning Path. I did use the IT Pro TV practice test. I went through the whole series, about 100 and something questions. I went through all of them. But what also helped was the Azure Microsoft Learning Path, because at the end of each section, you have a series of questions. Those helped a lot. So for practice tests, those are the two things that I used. I wouldn't really call the Azure part of things the Azure Learning Path practice test, but it's there, so let's include it there. So that, and also the IT Pro TV practice test. Those two things helped me a lot as well. So pretty much those are all the materials that I used for the exam. That's it, guys. This was an exam I needed to take before diving deeper into Azure. It helped me understand the fundamental of Azure before going in and taking other exams. I am studying for the AZ-104, and I will be sure to make a video about that once I pass it. Again, if you haven't done so already, make sure you thumbs up the video if you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see some more. I have a lot of new content coming up because, as I said in the intro, I started a new job and there's a lot of new things I'm going to learn. And as I learn a concept, or I try to understand a concept, I will have to build a lab and then try to simulate that and try to test a lot of things so I can get a better understanding of them, of the concepts that I'm learning or the concepts that I need to understand. So I'm going to be creating a whole bunch of lab, a whole bunch of this, a whole bunch of that. And once I'm learning those things, I'm going to be creating a video about them as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on your notification so you don't miss a thing. As always, don't forget to stay geeking, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.